This is Learn It from an 80s Song. I am your coach, Patricia Freiberg.
Today, we have a very special guest. Please welcome Eric Hodgdon. Eric is a coach, an author, speaker, and Zoe's dad. His book, A Sherpa Named Zoe, is a #1 bestseller. In his book, he gives us the tools on how to walk through grief and live with intention. He is also a TedX speaker appearing in TedX Youngstown. After losing his 15-year-old daughter, Zoe, to suicide in 2014, Eric found a way to get back up. And through his grief journey, he is sharing the lessons that he's learned so that no one else has to walk alone on their journey. Eric has trained thousands of people who simply want to know how to navigate the worst setbacks that can happen to all of us. Welcome, Eric. It is so great to have you here today.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm so honored to be with you.
So I just have to go back and say, how I know Eric is I had the very fortunate pleasure to get to be in a mastermind with Eric for a couple years with Bo Eason. And
Yes.
he and I were in a group together and we worked on our storytelling skills and developed stories. And when you're in a group like that, there's a level of vulnerability. And, I really appreciated Eric's support, throughout that storytelling process. And so I remember you so fondly from our mastermind, and it's just so great to connect with you here today.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to reconnect with you as well, Patricia, because it's what we learned and what we grew together with Bo is just phenomenal. And I mean, lifelong connections, lifelong friendships, and it stemmed from a story, which was incredible. So definitely glad that we could reconnect here.
Yeah, so great to see you. So this is the part of the show, Eric, that we have the big reveal as to what song we're going to be talking about today from the 1980s. So here we go. Can I get a drum roll, please? Eric, what is the song that best resonates with the story you're going to share with us today?
It is Don't Give Up by Peter Gabriel off of the album So from, I believe, 1986 or 1985.
I think you're
Love
right. I
that.
think it's 86. I got 86 as
Nice.
well.
Okay.
And yes, and Don't Give Up. And it was Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush,
Oh, that's
who
right. Kate Bush.
has
Yes.
the most beautiful
Mm,
voice. So I have so many. So I listened to the entire album today because that was
right.
actually one of my favorite albums from the 80s.
Mm.
And I had the cassette tape, so I would have to fast forward to get to my favorite songs. You know how that was. So like in order to hear,
Yes.
In Your Eyes, you had to fast forward for quite some time to get to that song. And we did not have those days of instant gratification. We had to really work
Right.
for it if we wanted to hear a song or we wanted to listen to it again. And so
Absolutely.
so many great songs in the album. I'll list some of them because I know some of our Gen Xers out there will know. Red
Mhm.
Rain,
Mm.
Sledgehammer, Don't Give Up, your song choice. The Voice Again, Big
Yes.
Time, Mercy
Yeah.
Street,
Mm.
and In Your Eyes. So
Yes.
that was from 1989, Say Anything movie. And that was
Yeah.
that moment where he had the boom box and he's out in the rain and the song is playing. It was
Right.
like, as a high schooler at the time, I mean, for me, it was like,
Yes.
as a hopeless romantic, it was John Cusack was just, he took the 80s for that,
He did. Absolutely. 100%. How many movies was that guy in? Right. I mean, always good.
So good. And so what's interesting about the song that you chose, actually, I did some research on it today. here's something that I had no idea about.
Hmm.
Um, he actually approached Dolly Parton first for this
Wow.
song. And this is according to
Okay.
Wikipedia. So thank you,
Yes.
Wikipedia. So he approached, Dolly Parton, and she declined it. And so he and Kate Bush were working on Games Without Frontiers. And
Mm.
so he ended up casting Kate to be his duet partner in that song. And
Nice.
honestly, I can't imagine any two voices perfect for that song. And you're going to talk about
Right.
how it
Right.
resonates, but just that, he's down and out, she's sending those encouraging,
Right.
most nurturing
Mm-hmm.
words, right? Like she is
Yeah.
just embracing him, and just to see. And also I watched the music video today, and it had them in an actual embrace for the entire 6 minutes and 30
Mm.
seconds, or however long the
I
song
remember that
is.
video. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a total eclipse in the back, from the light
Yeah.
to the dark and then the light again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like showing the process of of all kinds of things that they're
Mm-hmm.
going through. In this case, Peter Gabriel was singing about the Great Depression, and
Mm.
the art that inspired him were the images that were taken by Dorothea Lange. And her most famous one was a migrant mother, and that was in
Mm.
1936, from 1936. So
Yeah.
he really, from an artistic standpoint, really showed the struggle. And such an amazing song. And I'm so glad you
Yeah.
brought it to Learned It from an 80s Song. So thank you for that.
Oh, I love the song. I mean, it's resonated with me since 1986 in so many ways. As a teen, things happen, things go sideways in life, and it could have been anything, something small, something big. And when you listen to that song and you're able to realize, look, you just have to keep going no
Yes.
matter what.
Yeah.
That's and it's resonated with me throughout my life, not just through my teen years, but in my 30s, in my 40s, and even now. When I hear it, I just think of something that I was struggling with, and how I got on the other side of that was just to
Yeah.
keep going. So yeah, yeah, love
Yeah.
it.
I love that.
I didn't know those facts either. Thank you for sharing all that
Of
about the song too.
course.
It's very
Yes.
powerful background for just one song, but still it
Incredible.
is powerful to see where it's birthed and how it comes to life
Yes.
inside of these albums that
Right.
stay, and it just makes it a classic, right? I don't think that song will ever go out
Absolutely.
of style.
No, no. I think it would just continue to be used more, because it's so, especially as we're going through what we've gone through with the pandemic, and also, mental health, et cetera, et cetera. I can't imagine
Right.
a better song to listen to, and when you need to feel that support. So with
Exactly.
that in mind, let's go right into your story. Eric, will you share your story with us today?
Absolutely. This might be hard to hear, just because of the nature of the story itself. And if it might bring some things up with you, please know that this was something that happened. I'm not there any longer, but I'm in a different place now. And about 8 years ago now, I was struggling to fight for custody of my 15-year-old daughter Zoe. She had been hospitalized several times for just difficult emotions, and I wouldn't call it depression, but she was struggling. And so it was best that at that time she was in the hospital. And so I would visit her often, and occasionally she was able to come home for weekends. And ultimately, she actually was able to step down from a hospital unit to a group home where I got to see her every weekend. And those weekends were so much fun because we would go to the beach and we'd freeze our hands picking up the cold, wet, sandy rocks, or she would be up in her room listening to some music, playing her ukulele and burning some jasmine incense. And sometimes we would just go to the Mug and Muffin for breakfast on a Sunday morning, just a local little diner. And we love to do that. This one particular weekend, I pick up Zoe and I bring her back to my house, and she's up in her room listening to some music. And I ask her if she wants to hang out with some friends. And she's like, I really don't have any, Dad. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but why don't we just grab something to eat before bed? And she's like, okay, that sounds good. Well, we were cleaning up dinner and she said to me, I'm really tired. Excuse me. I'm gonna go to bed, Dad. I'm just really tired. And I said, okay, Pumpkins, I love you. And she said, I love you too, Dad. I'm back at my computer doing some work, and I head up to say goodnight a little while later. And when I open her door, um, she's not in her bed, but all I can see is a circle of Christmas lights around the perimeter of her room. And there's Jonathan Frusciante playing on the stereo. Out of the corner of my eye, I can see that she's standing in her closet. And I said, Zoe, what are you doing? And she didn't answer me. I called 911. About 5 days later, 900 people came to Zoe's wake. 900 people. I couldn't believe it. It wouldn't stop. The wake was for 5 hours. I would have stood there another 5 hours, but they had to close down for the evening. And I was just so touched by the support and the love. But after we laid Zoe to rest, I was struggling. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how I was going to go about doing it, because her time stopped, but mine had to keep going. I had phantom pains in my body. I didn't know where they came from. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was lucky enough to get a reprieve from work for as much time as I needed. And I know that doesn't happen to many people. It was just a really big struggle. But the one thing that started to give me some hope that I could make it through this and survive it was my daughter's friends, Zoe's friends. They were just, they looked at me, what am I going to do about this? And I said, well, one thing we're never going to do is we're never going to give up. And so when I think about don't give up, that's why this song resonates with me. And we didn't. And I can say today, excuse me, 8 years later, that every one of Zoe's friends is still with us. So we found a way to survive, to get back up. And a lot of us are now living beyond the loss of losing Zoe. And there's a lot of lessons that have come from that. So that's, again, why this song resonates with me so much.
Wow, Eric. And you are probably one of the strongest people I've ever met, in my life. And I remember feeling like that when I first met you and knew of your story through Bo Eason's mastermind. And I want to thank you for sharing your story of vulnerability and the strength that you have I don't think there's even words for it. Like, I can't find the words for how much strength you have, because, being a mom of 2 boys, also having a 16-year-old right now and
Right.
an 11-year-old, 12, he just turned 12, just the pain and what you endured and, was unimaginable, right?
It is. I mean, it's something that you can never prepare yourself for. I mean, this is not anything that you would ever think would be part of your life.
Right.
And I also think that, in life, we are faced with certain situations and struggles. And, sometimes we have a struggle that we dealt with when we were younger. There's some things we can bring, some lessons we can learn from that. I'm not suggesting that losing your loved one, it has to be a lesson for life. All I'm saying is that throughout life, you learn things, and sometimes you bring old solutions to new problems to the table when you're dealing with something. And I think that's what makes grief so very difficult, is that you're faced with something you've maybe never have had to go through before, whether it's losing a parent, a sibling, a relative, a friend, a child. You're faced with this new set of emotions and challenges that you're just not prepared to deal with, most
Yeah.
likely. And so that's where I think that most of the resources out there right now are focused on people just surviving.
Right.
and
Right.
and that's okay. I mean, we can get to a survival place, but beyond that, it is okay for you to live your life and honor your loved one at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, I think that's where that kind of comes from. But I appreciate that. And strength is your strength. It is derived from carrying on. Your strength
Yes.
is derived from asking for help if you're struggling with
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you have to think about moving through just the next minute, hour, or day at a
Mm-hmm.
time, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But every
Mm-hmm.
step you take, no matter how big or small it is, it's still moving forward, and it's okay to do that.
Yes. And the work that you're doing to help people get through the grief, like you had said,
Mm,
not just survive it, but then how do you continue, like you
right,
you say, to live a life of intention, to
right.
continue to thrive in many cases. And and what you had said, um in your book, because I've read your book,
Well, thank you.
is just really, and I love, the book. And if you guys, please check it out. It's called A Sherpa Named Zoe, and it's how to walk through grief and live with intention
Thank
is
you.
the tagline for it. And just for anyone who's struggling to get up that next day and then
Mm,
continue to move forward, and how you give people the skills through what you experienced, to
yes.
move forward. And I remember and also, if you haven't seen Eric's TEDx talk. It's on YouTube, and it's TEDx Youngstown, and you'll see Eric's amazing TEDx speaking there.
Well, thank you.
And
Thank you.
what I loved was when you were talked to your sister, Holly is her name, I believe.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yes, and you had said, gonna
Hmm.
how am I gonna continue to go to
I was
live?
asking her that question. I was asking her that question in the car on the way home from the hospital that night, because I had intended to go into the hospital and I knew I was expecting Zoe to be alive. I was expecting to
Right.
be able to talk with her and to tell her it's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. I know you're scared, but I was met at the door of the ER by the doctor who said he did everything he could, but that he couldn't save her. And I'm
Mhm.
like, what?
Yeah.
So, 3, 4 hours later, I don't even know how much time I was at the hospital. Um, my sister and I eventually went back to my house, and I'm gripping the seatbelt in her car. And I said to her, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yes.
And I just held on to that thing as if something was going to happen, like I was going to fall. And
Mhm.
I think that was very, this was becoming an experience that she couldn't even relate to. Just she was there with me as a family member, like
Mhm.
Zoe's friends and my other family was there. It was this was becoming my experience. That okay, I didn't want that to be an experience of just stopping my life,
Mhm.
um, because I think Zoe would be very upset with me if I was wasting all those good memories from her life by not living mine.
Right.
And so that's I guess another reason why, this, when you start telling your story about your experience, this is your experience. This isn't trying to bring somebody else into the fold of this. It's about your struggle, because your struggle can be in the service of others in some positive way,
Yes.
and help them to get
Yes.
through whatever they're working through. Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing, is being of service, to others in order to help them with their grief. And
Absolutely.
what it's like for that day one, what day
Hmm.
one felt like.
Hmm.
And then in your book, you share about how to continue to remember and love that loved one, but yet
Right.
still be able to honor your own life.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
you have to. I mean, and I think that it's very challenging for a lot of folks who will think, well, I don't even know if I'm going to, they might be asking themselves the same question. How am I going to survive this? Like, I just lost my spouse, or I just lost my child. How am I going to carry on with my life without them in it?
Hmm.
And it can be very scary. And we all need a guide. I mean, we really do. We can do certain things on our own. And yes, the healing takes us. Time is not the driver of your healing. It is a companion.
Mm.
And so
Yes.
you have to put some effort into it, but it's on your time, your agenda. And there's no one right way to do this except for the one way that works for you. So
Yes.
I think that there's a lot of things have been that these are a lot of the things that I've learned along this journey
Yes.
that I like, if I figured something out, I want to be able to share that with somebody else so that they've got some tools to work with on their journey if they run into the same obstacle or rough terrain
Hmm.
while they're walking this thing. So it's
Yes.
just been that's the I think I wouldn't say it excites me, Patricia, but if I figured something out, I want to share that with others
Yes.
because we've got there's no greater gift in my mind than to share what you've learned in your life to help somebody through a struggle of their own.
Yes, absolutely. And I just thank you for the work that you're doing and
Well,
how
thank
you are
you.
being of service to others with this. So obviously from the lyrics of the song, "Don't give
Yes.
up." I mean
Hmm.
that you leaned on. Well, what's interesting is you definitely had to lean on some guides on your way, and I know Zoe
Yes.
continued to be your guide um,
Yes.
through your grief. But then also you were thrusted into being the guide for other teens, her friends,
Yes.
and all 900 of them, For
Hmm.
someone who said she doesn't have any friends and then 900 people are going in and out of your house,
Right.
it's, she's clearly was a very special young lady. And
Yeah.
yes. And so tell us a little bit, about that, about how, in the song, how, don't give up. It's about, you specifically, not giving up and leaning on others, but then
Mm.
share with us the process also of um, how you then really started helping the young students that were coming to you.
Oh, I appreciate that. It was really about them looking at me, wondering what do I do with this? You know,
Hmm.
I if some of them were struggling themselves, and um, I couldn't bear one of her friends following suit, and I know it wasn't up to me. I mean, that wasn't my decision, um, but I wanted to do everything I could to just stay connected with them as much as possible and ask them how, instead of saying, hey, call me if you're struggling,
Right.
but instead to ask them how they were doing, and even just randomly calling them and checking in with them. And yeah,
Hmm.
we were all kind of in the same spot. We were all
Hmm.
struggling, and so
Hmm.
they could relate to what I was feeling, I could relate to what they were feeling, and so we would talk it out. I wasn't, parents and children, sometimes there's a disconnect there. And so
Hmm.
because I wasn't mom and dad, they were more comfortable talking with me because I
Hmm.
was I was becoming Zoe's dad for them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that was just wonderful. And so, I mean, these conversations continue to this day. I just had a conversation with one of Zoe's friends about a month ago, and she's out in
Wow.
LA now, and she's still struggling, but you know what? She's finding her way. And I'm so proud of her for
So
continuing
great.
on. And there's been some friends have moved on and just carried on with their life, and I don't have much contact with them,
Hmm.
but that's okay. That just, I mean, this was something that they needed and I needed at the same time
Yeah.
in order to move through this. But they were just asking questions, and I was just thinking of ways to help them find their way through that next moment or this moment that they were in, that they were struggling with. So,
Yeah.
and it really went back to just, nobody's giving up here. We're not giving up.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find a way. We'll do this together. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that term's been used a lot throughout COVID here the last couple of years, but
Yeah.
it rings true. It's true. It's,
Right.
we're in this together. We're going to find a
Mm-hmm.
way to get through it together.
Yep.
And if you're struggling, the first thing you do is you pick up the phone and you call me, or I'm going to call you if I feel like, what I see is not, something's is not right. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and they took advantage of it, and so did I, and it's just worked out very well. So,
Wow, that's wonderful how you were
well,
there to
thank you.
support them in the process. And,
And thank
you
you.
know,
I look,
yeah,
they helped me too. I mean, they really
yeah,
did. I'm so grateful for them, because sometimes they said something to me. They reminded me of something that Zoe said to them. And I'm like, I never even knew she said that. And so, getting little tidbits of Zoe, I feel like combined, that it's like all of them combined. I have bits and pieces of Zoe in one group of people,
that's
and
wonderful.
they still remind me. And so I love that, and I'm so appreciative. And sometimes the kids will send me a photo that they took of a Zoe that I never saw, and it's like,
Wow.
wow, I get to see her again, and it's just beautiful.
Yes.
And I could not be more proud of her as a dad.
Yeah.
Just the way that they went to her for advice in these hospital units, because she was a voice of reason. and
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't believe how much they looked up to her. And they still do. They still
Yeah.
do.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And thank you again for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And I'd love to know a little bit about, we talk about VIA strengths on the
Yes.
podcast. And the VIA strengths assessment is rooted in positive psychology. And it was developed by Dr. Seligman and Dr. Peterson. There are 24 strengths that describe who you are to your core.
Mm,
Your signature strengths are those that are most central to who you are as a person, that best captures your uniqueness and essence. And that's from Dr. Nemec's book on character strength interventions. So you took the VIA Strengths Assessment. I'll be curious. I have them here in front of me, actually,
yes.
and you have a nice package of strengths that are unique to you, and really people who are using their signature strengths will feel the most energized when
Mm,
using those strengths. Now,
mm,
there are also phasic strengths. So those are strengths that you may need to lean into at certain times, right? That may not be
yes.
in your top strengths. So I'd love to know, based on the 24, what strengths do you think you used during the time of your story?
Well, it's funny because my signature, the first strength that came up as I guess the highest on the list was honesty or courage. And
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about Zoe when I started to write my story, but I was afraid. I didn't know how to make it available without it sounding like I was dumping on people,
Right.
like, I didn't want that, because I did that with my divorce and it didn't work out too well. And so, and I didn't want that. Like, I wanted people to know who Zoe was, what she stood for, but more importantly, how she touched my life as a dad, and not just myself as a dad, but also her friends, and what she left behind as a legacy. And so,
Hmm.
talking about it, I had to have some courage to talk about that. And I feel like that came forward with the story. I was a lot of love of learning is the second strength that I have on my VIA results. And a love of learning is I wanted to figure out how to move my way through losing her, and
Hmm.
how I could learn from those lessons and then turn around and share those.
Hmm.
The third one is fairness or justice. I'm not really sure how that one plays in, but maybe it's just that I'm going to help anybody who comes forward who's struggling with the loss of a loved one. It doesn't matter how it happened, right?
Right.
would like to be able to help. The next one is forgiveness. I did have to forgive not only myself, but I had to forgive Zoe because she took her life. And I didn't think
Yeah.
about that at first.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I wasn't mad at her. But then as time went by, I started to feel some anger and resentment. And I needed to clear that up. And so I had to forgive myself. Importantly, that was really huge. We
Yeah.
hold a lot of guilt, even if the loss isn't from somebody taking their life, but otherwise it's from even COVID. Were you able to be with your family at the end? I should have done something. Forgiveness for
Mm-hmm.
yourself for
Mm-hmm.
what you perceive you didn't do, but really being appreciative and grateful for what you do have in your life now, but also what you did do for your loved one is really important
Yes.
as well.
Very, very
And I
good.
think, yeah, exactly. And the last one here that's in the top five, if you will, is social intelligence or humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to help my fellow human being. I really do. And if I can help one person in my lifetime, then telling my story of how I got through losing Zoe is hopefully the way I can do that.
Well, I think it's safe to say that you've helped way more than one person at this point.
I hope so. Yeah.
I know so. And that's incredible. You have a beautiful package of strengths. And what's
Thank you.
interesting about honesty is that it is the virtue of courage.
Mm,
And earlier on, when I said to you, I feel like you're the strongest person I've ever met because you went through an incredibly painful time, and you're here helping others in their grief journey. And I feel that honesty, and courage, the virtue of courage, it's so evident within you,
mm.
100%.
Thank you so
Um,
much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I love, and so the definition of it from Dr. Nemec's book is being true to yourself and authentic to others, speaking the truth,
Mhm.
but more broadly, presenting oneself in a genuine way,
Mm,
and acting in a sincere way, being without pretense, taking responsibility for one's feelings and actions. So
yes.
that's honesty. And love of learning is wisdom. I have love of learning in my tops strengths as well. And for you, it sounds like you really had to learn how. You probably read a lot. You learned a lot about how to make it through that challenging time. So then
Hmm.
you would then help others get through those challenging times.
Yes.
Um, and then love of learning, it's a great strength. The other one you had
Nice.
said fairness. That is justice, that the virtue of justice, and it's pro-social behavior,
Mm,
treating people the same according to the notions of fairness and justice, not letting personal feelings bias your decisions,
hmm.
and giving others and everyone a fair chance. And
Yes.
and by pro-social behavior, you can also look at that for you as how you are helping others that are in the situations through your training and your coaching, how you continue to pro-socially help the greater good, help the world.
Yes.
Forgiveness is, you know, that is a special strength. Actually, yeah, really special strength. It's temperance is the virtue, and it's forgiving those who have done wrong, accepting the shortcomings of others, and then giving people a second chance. Let go of hurt, and you also can let go of hurt when wronged.
Yes.
Although you have to
Yes.
exercise that, it's not going to come naturally.
Hmm.
So even though people
Correct.
have these strengths, it's not like, oh, well,
Right.
they've got forgiveness, so they can just feel better.
Right.
Um, no, it's still, you still have to exercise the actual strength in order to use it. But here are the benefits of it. Now, I love
Mm,
this
okay.
about forgiveness. It's associated with many physical and psychological benefits,
Hmm.
emotional well-being, healthy lifestyle behaviors,
Hmm.
social support, and spiritual well-being. People who have this strength experience less anger and anxiety, depression, and hostility. So it is, if you can
That's so true.
imagine.
That's so true. I mean, all of that wrapped up in this one package called forgiveness. It's a release,
Hmm.
and I think that when you do, even Gandhi said the forgiver is blessed with the release
Yeah.
of the anger or whatever it is that you're feeling. And that could be guilt as well.
Hmm.
You need, if you, it's okay to forgive yourself if you've been feeling guilty or angry or sad, even if it's been for an extended period of time, Patricia, especially in grief. Sometimes people grieve, they're on day one for years before they finally figure out that it's okay for them to feel better.
Yeah.
And then they think, oh my gosh, I've been in this mode for 3 years.
Yep.
It's okay. It's okay. There's no one right way to move through this, but in a sense, you can almost give yourself that, you know, almost, I wouldn't say praise, but give yourself your own approval and permission to start whatever part of the journey you need to start at whatever time it happens.
Hmm.
And so, but forgiving and giving yourself permission to carry on is something that I think that is missing in a lot of the resources that are out there right now.
Yeah.
And they need to
So
be,
good.
we need to, because I think a lot of times we want that permission from our loved one.
And
You know,
we can't get it.
we
And
can't
it's
get
just
it yet.
right.
100% right. We can't get it. And so,
Yeah. So
yeah.
how do you, yeah. Yeah, that's so fascinating. And I'm
Mm,
thinking about, my own, I lost my dad 2 years ago in December.
mm,
And, just thinking about, the grieving process, with him. And, um, ask, and I remember like he was in, he was not really conscious, but I remember asking for forgiveness. I didn't know
mm,
if he could hear me or not, but
yeah.
you know, um I remember he wanted to say something to me before my wedding day, like that. On that day, he wanted to give me some
Yes.
words, and I said,
Yeah.
"Dad, don't make me cry. You're going to mess up my makeup. Can we save this for later?" And then
Yeah.
I remember telling him, like, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I know you wanted to say something profound to me that day,
Mm,
and I'm so sorry. I was so caught up in my makeup running that that I didn't let
yeah.
you say it, and just things like that. It's
Well,
it's it's so interesting.
what do you think if you were sitting with your dad right now and you
Yes.
were to ask him that question, what do you think he would say to you about what he wanted to say to you that day?
I think he would just say that I was really proud of me, and for sure. I
Yeah.
think that's what he would
Yeah.
have said. How I've grown into a beautiful young lady, and
Yeah.
how he was proud of of me, and as I was embarking on leaving the family and creating
Hmm.
my own.
I love that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Patricia. And that's probably what he was going to say to you.
Yes, yes,
So
but
I love
then
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
already I'm starting to well up, so my makeup's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
run. So
All right. Not now, Eric. Not now, Eric. Right.
we'll talk about this later, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fine.
Just kidding.
Uh,
Yes, yes. That's so powerful. Yes. Thank you.
you're
So
welcome.
social intelligence, moving into social
Yes.
intelligence, that definitely you use that in being able to relate to especially the teens that were coming to you. It's like being
Yes.
able to be aware of your feelings and theirs,
Hmm.
and the
It's,
process.
yeah. It's about meeting them where they are, not where I want them to be.
Hmm.
And so if a kid comes to me and has said, I'm really having a hard time today, I don't know if I'm going to make it tonight, okay, no panic here, tell me more, what's going on, what are you feeling? I'm feeling like a burden, I'm feeling like nobody cares, I'm feeling like I'm never going to feel better again. I mean, all these things. And listening and not reacting, but just actually acting as an empathetic witness to them, that sometimes people just need an ear.
Yeah.
They don't want you to fix it, they just need an ear. And then
Hmm.
when they hear themselves say it out loud, now it comes out a little differently. And they'd be like, well, actually, I don't, all right, yeah, I'm struggling, but I think I'm just overwhelmed. Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Yes.
Right. And so
Yes.
when you start to peel back those layers of what is really going on, then you have a better sense of how, if you can ask, would it be okay with you if I um, shared with you something that I've learned in my journey when I felt overwhelmed? And a lot of times people will say, oh yeah, absolutely, but asking permission of them in that moment is really key as well, because otherwise you're just going to say, all right, here's what you got to do. People don't like to
Right.
be told what to
Right.
do. They want to be reminded of what's important.
Yeah.
And so, and that's okay. But asking permission on that. So sorry to interrupt you on that one, Patricia.
Oh, no, I love what you're saying. And it puts us right into exactly my next question is going to be. And that is, what would be an action item for our audience? Um, you know, uh, Anything that with the vast experience that you have, um, whether people are going through the grieving process or um, raising teenagers,
Mhm.
anything that you can think of from an action item for our audience today.
Yeah, I think that when you're faced with a setback, it is to find a tool or a path that works for you in that moment. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out who that is or what that is, but at no point are you alone. You know, I think if you are faced with a very difficult setback, whether it's the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship,
Mhm.
the loss of a loved one,
Mhm.
we're our bodies take over. We go into survival mode. That's just
Mhm.
how we're wired. And
Mhm.
so at no point in either of those scenarios, especially the loss of a loved one, are you alone. There's other people that have walked that path that will want to walk it with you, and help you, not try to fix it for you, but don't it's not about letting that time take care of everything and be the driver of your healing, but it's a companion. It's part of the process, but really focusing on connecting with someone who's got your back, that could be a family
Yeah.
member, it could be a friend, it could be a counselor or a therapist. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It could be a
Mhm.
coach, somebody
Mhm.
who just understands where you've been and just wants to walk with you on that journey, because they know what's up ahead and they can help you avoid some of those pitfalls that maybe they
Pitfalls.
fell into. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, just this is a great time to ask if, our audience members that might be experiencing a setback, how would they get to coach with you? How would they get the opportunity to work with you?
I appreciate that. I am putting together right now an online course called Surviving the Loss. It's going to be released soon. But if they wanted to get to know more about me and what I do, and they can go to my website, which is erichodgdon.com. And I've got some free resources there for them and for your audience as well. And I'll make sure that you have the link. But I've got a grief survival guide that I'd like to offer your audience as
Oh,
a
that's
thank you for listening,
yeah.
and hopefully it helps you in the moments in those early days if you are struggling with a loss or somebody who is.
Wow, that's so generous. Thank you so much for providing that. And that
You're welcome.
we'll definitely have that up on the show notes for sure, so that our audience can take advantage of that. And then also your book, A Sherpa Named Zoe is the
Yes.
name of the book, and you can
And
get it
that's
on
available on
Amazon and on
Amazon.
your
Yes.
website, right?
Yes.
Amazon and
Yes.
website.
Absolutely.
Yes, very
Yes.
good.
Thank you so
And
much, Patricia.
yes, thank you. Let's talk about 80s trends. So
Oh
this is the
yeah.
part of the show. We've gone through our story and your amazing story. You picked a brilliant song. Um, your strengths package is amazing, and thank you for your action item. So this is the part of the show where we get to enjoy some 80s trends. And if
Awesome.
we were in your closet in the 80s, since we're close to the same age, what would we find? What would you be donning in the 1980s?
Parachute pants.
Yes.
Probably my skateboards in there. Tony Hawk skateboard. My
Wow.
Chuck T's. Definitely had a mullet. Don't want to talk about it. If I did that today, I'd have what's called a skullet. It would just
A
be, it wouldn't
skullet.
be right. Uh, Geez, what else? Well, I think it was just a lot of the puffy clothing, the shoulder. I didn't have
Windbreakers?
shoulder pads, the windbreakers, the Ray-Ban sunglasses,
Yes.
you
Wayfarers.
know, Wayfarers, absolutely. Those have
Yes.
changed quite a bit.
Yes.
But listening, I mean, I was up in my room listening to just all sorts of 80s music, David Bowie and Styx and
Yeah.
Journey. And I mean, I just jamming out a lot of Prince back in the 80s.
Oh, yes.
That was huge. Purple
And
Rain was really,
your first 45, right?
it was my first 45. And I don't think I've ever looked back since. And so, yeah, it's been, the 80s. I love when I'm driving even today. When I was living up in Maine, in the town that I grew up in, I would be driving around town listening to the 80s on 8 on Sirius XM.
Sirius
And
XM.
right. And
Yep.
I'd be like, oh my gosh, I remember listening to this song almost in the same spot, 30 years ago. And it's just,
Right.
it's just odd, but it brings back those, those feelings of just, what the 80s was like. And I think, one of the big thing, a lot of those 80s movies as well was a big trend. Like
Yes.
you were talking about, John Cusack was in, the like we had the Brat Pack and Breakfast
Yes.
Club.
Breakfast
And
Club.
oh my gosh, like those movies
Pretty
were
in
just
Pink.
Pretty in
All the
Pink. And yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
16 Candles, like the list goes
Yes.
on and on of like such great Weird Science. Was a
Weird
great one.
Science. Right. Better Off Dead was another John Cusack
Yeah.
one that was really
Yes.
good. Yeah, it was really good. We had those trends. It's funny too, because we didn't have cell phones back then.
Mm-mm.
And so our communication, another trend would have been a 25-foot phone cord, so you could actually have your conversation in another room, right?
Yes,
And,
exactly. And I was just telling my boys about it the other day, how I would pull the cord so tight,
Yeah.
to get to the bathroom. And it was just, it was never got back to its normal shape. It was
No, it never
it wasn't
did.
curly
Right.
anymore. It was like curly, then straight, then curly, and a little frayed. And the wiring was, it got close to the phone.
That's right. Well, I mean, that was the privacy. I remember this because my sister got a phone up in her room, and it was game over up there, and
Yeah,
and
you never saw her.
yes, you never saw her. And but she wasn't her own line, but it was just the family line. But you pick up the phone, get off the phone, I'm on the phone. Oh my
Right.
gosh, right? You think you
Right.
so
And if somebody were going to call you, I mean, you didn't have early on we didn't have answering machines. And
Correct.
so, you had to call, and then it would ring and ring if you were trying to
Right.
get a hold of someone. And if
Mhm.
somebody was on the other line, it would be busy. So then
Right.
if you were hoping for, a guy to call you, it was like, everybody clear the phone, somebody may call me,
Yeah.
in the
And then the
event
phone
someone
rings and
may
it's
call.
right.
And it's
And
not,
then
it's not for
it's
me.
not.
Yeah,
It's like it's like for your mom or dad, and they have to talk for 20 minutes. Like, come on,
and I'm just like looking at the clock. Come on already, get off the phone.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So many delayed gratifications, which the kids don't really know anything about that. Between
No.
pressing play, pause, rewind, fast
Mhm.
forward, your tape's getting eaten, and you have to go out and
Yes.
get the pencil out, and then
Yep. Re-roll
twirl
it.
it back in and to listen to it again. I mean,
Yep.
they just don't know.
The Atari was the big trend in the mid 80s, early to
Yes.
mid 80s, where that was a joystick with a button on it, and
That's it.
there was just blocks. The graphics were blocks. There was no graphics to these things. But when you're
No.
like, oh my gosh, that's Pac-Man, that looks just like the real game, The
Yeah.
arcades was another one. We had an
Right.
arcade in our town, and it was,
That was
I
fun.
visited that place probably once or twice a week, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I miss those days in a lot of ways, but
Yeah. The simplicity.
but the
There's something to
simplicity,
be said
yeah,
for that. Yeah.
yeah,
There's something to
absolutely,
be said. And not having a phone attached to you where anyone can get a hold of you at any time,
right,
right?
exactly, exactly,
We stretch our
exactly,
cords.
yeah.
Well,
Wow.
thanks again so much for being on the show with us today, Eric. And
Thank you.
once again, um, let us know how we get a hold of you one more time. Your website
Is erichodgdon.com. I'll make sure you have the link.
and
And
Instagram.
then in Instagram, it's at Eric B. Hodgdon. And then if you are interested in picking up a copy of the book, A Sherpa Named Zoe, it is available on Amazon. And we can put a link in there as well. But thank you so much,
Super.
Patricia, for having me
Yes.
on. It was such a wonderful catching up with you, but also wonderful conversation. And I hope this
Yes.
helps your audience in some way.
Absolutely.
And I
It
love
will.
what you're doing with this podcast. It's just a wonderful example of how the 80s are kind of timeless in a lot of ways, especially with the music. There's a lot of good music that
Yes.
came out back then that we carry with us today, and it still applies to our lives and can still help us. And so, but I love this. I love this. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Eric, for being on the show. And until next time.